Welcome back to the channel, good people. In this video I'll just be adding on to the library website that we built in the previous two videos, part 1 and part 2. Please be sure to go check them out and also subscribe to the channel, it helps me out a ton. And in this video we'll be talking about the library API, which you're going to develop using the Django REST framework. So without further ado, let's just get into it. So as you can see on the screen, let me just activate my virtual environment. Source and bin activate. To do that, I'm inside my virtual environment. Then the first command that is in order is to pip install the Django REST framework. I'm gonna put the command here on the terminal, so it's pip install Django REST framework. When I hit enter, it will tell me requirement already satisfied, because I already installed it when I was initially just developing this API, so it's already there. Then after installing it, we'll have to include the third-party module, which is the REST framework, into the Django project's settings.py file, which I did here. You can see we have to put that on there so that our application can recognize and it can be able to utilize the Django REST framework. Before, when I was developing it, I was receiving a lot of errors, especially when it came to just importing modules from the REST framework, and I never did this part where you have to put like these third-party modules in there so that you can access these libraries in the REST framework. So that is actually quite important for you to do. And with that, once you've done that, we will create our app APIs. So we'll just do a python manage.py start app. So you're going to create an app called APIs. This is the command right here. I am not gonna create it because we already have it here, as you can see on the extreme left hand side. So we have our app APIs. So when you do that, now we've created our APIs app that you're going to use it moving forward. Then you'll go back to our settings and you'll include the app that you've created here, the app apis.app.apps APIs config. So we have to do this so that our Django app that you have made inside our Django project can be recognized and as you can even see, it has a double danda in it, so it's also be seen as a module. So that's a very important step. Every time you're starting, you must do that. If you don't do that, there will be miscommunication in your application and your app will somewhat break. Then we'll go to our URLs. We're going to configure our URLs. So inside the Django project, remember we had the admin part, which we used especially when we were trying to access the Django admin. So when you start up a server, you want to get to that endpoint for the admin. So you put the server 127.0.0.1, then /admin. You'll go to the admin dashboard. Then in this case, because we are creating our own route that you're going to be able to use to utilize our API endpoint, we'll create a URLs here that will enable us to access the API endpoint. And this one we left it empty because by default we wanted to have our website just show the books. So when you just go directly, when you do a python manage.py run server, when you do that, then when you go and follow this link, let me just show it here. When you follow this link, by default you can see on the screen it's 27, well, it's on port 8000, so it's 127.0.0.1, right? And you don't have any endpoint here. So if you go ahead and point it to admin, we'll go to the admin dashboard. I've already logged in, so it will just show it as I've logged in by default. Then if you leave it empty, it will show us this. But the one that you're going to develop here is the API one. and this is what you're going to develop in this video, and I'm just going to show you step by step on how I went ahead and achieve that. So we just stop the server real quick. We stop that server. So Control C. So those are the URLs that you have to put. You have to put the API ones that when you go to the browser and you already started our server, you can be able to access it. Then after you have set that up, you add that in there. Then in our APIs app that we created, you need to create a urls.py file. This file will import a future view called book API view, and we'll set it to the URL, which is 2 empty strings, so it will appear as API. So in our urls.py file, you could see it's a file that is untracked. So it's a file that you don't generate it. It doesn't get generated when you start the app, so you have to create that. So we added this here. So we'll add the name to it as well, books list, which will help in the future if you want to refer to that specific route. Then we add that in there. Then if you go to the views, this is where the part where we are going to import the REST framework from. You're going to use this web framework library, the REST framework library there, which is quite important. And using the from the top line, we have imported like the Django REST framework generics, class of views, the books model from our books app, which we used it to like enable us to be able to store the books, and serializers from our API app. We'll create the serializer used here, book serializer, in the following section. I'm going to cover that as well. And in the serializer, so a serializer translates complex data like query sets and modeled instance into a format that is easily to consume over the internet, typically JSON. So what we are doing here is using the Django REST framework. We are using HTTP request and response, and the response we're getting, we're trying to see it through using JSON. So going into the serializers, you could see you're seeing the fields title, subtitle, author, and number. So this is what you're going to get when you did the run server here. Just go to the API, go to the API route. Hold on a bit. This is what we want to see in the end. Just stop the server. Just stop the server right there. Then the next thing that I did was just to run the server as we did there, and we're able to like have an output of how the books are and how we're going to fetch the books from the database that we had. Then after that, I wrote some tests in there. I wrote some tests for the books, but this one I'm going to just write some tests there. I'm going to make sure to commit them to GitHub, and yeah, and I'm going to cover also deployment in a future video, as I just said. But basically that's how I was able to achieve it, and that's how I was able to do it. So yeah, I mean, it was actually quite interesting. I learned a lot of things along the way, and there's some nuances towards just building stuff, especially when it comes to backend development. And I'll just be coming out with other ways. I will also come up with some ways you can use even also Ruby on Rails, Node.js. I've interacted with that a bit. And yeah, so if you guys like the video, make sure to leave your feedback down in the comments. I'll leave the link to the GitHub repository, the source code, and the heavily detailed readme in the comments section. Not in the comments, but in the description box. So yeah, man. Happy coding.